Hey there, I'm Sully, and as always, welcome to the Gun Club. Alrighty, this is going to be a little bit of a change of pace from a lot of the things we've done in the past, and we're going to be following up on something I've been watching for a while, and we're going to be going back over the latest updates in the Alec Baldwin case. And there's been a lot that's gone on, and there's actually some information that came out earlier this month. And after going through that, along with some of the other investigative stuff, um, some of it's been kind of interesting, and I think we may have a few answers as what really happened. Also, I was talking with someone the other day, and there was, telling them I was doing a deep dive on the Alec Baldwin, and she said, "Well, there's something weird about that case. I could never figure out what happened." I said, "Well, watch the show on Thursday, and we'll see if we can't shed a little light on it for you." Um, Going to give a few minutes for everyone to file on in, get the stream up and running. Um, we've got YouTube and Rumble starting off, and we're going to be running the beginning of the stream. I'd say probably the first third to a half of it on both YouTube and Rumble dual streaming. And then we're going to have a break where we go straight onto Rumble alone. A lot of that is just, well, my respect for YouTube. They have certain rules. They have their way of feeling about certain things that we'll be discussing and manipulating and showing and telling, and some other video footage I have. And so as a result, I'll play by their rules. I respect their rules. Therefore, I've got to put some of it as just Rumble exclusive for the second half, and maybe some of the bombshell stuff, maybe some of the this is how this happened kind of thing. It is what it is. Like I said, I'll play by their rules. I'll respect their rules. I also have both the chats open. You can tell I'm sort of looking back and forth over to the side here. If you have a question, by all means, please throw it in the chat either on YouTube or Rumble. If you would be so kind as to give me a thumbs up or a like on the stream, I'd definitely appreciate that. This one took a little bit of work and a little bit of research to get into, and well, a lot of reading of some really small text. And it was interesting. I read through several reports about this, including the Sheriff's Department investigative report, some information from the FBI lab that analyzed the firearm in question, some information from a private lab that also analyzed the firearm and ammunition in question, and looked over a bunch of film and footage and everything else. So got a lot of information. I did my best to distill it down and sort of make it bite-sized, understandable, and get to the point that everyone can have a better idea of what happened. And, I think when we want to go into the big deal about what happened, on, that day, Helena Hutchins, the videographer, was killed tragically in an accident on the shooting of the film set. We know that. That's, TLDR, that's the big one. But when we get into the how, there's a lot of speculation there. There's a lot of questioning. And quite frankly, it was not a failure on the part of one person or two people. There was a whole lot of failure to go around, quite honestly. If we were passing out failure like ladling out soup, there's enough failure to go around and feed quite a few people who were working on that set. And again, having read the statements from the staff on site, the statements from the armorer, the statements from Alec Baldwin himself, reading, the investigative notes, reading down right through the autopsy of Miss Hutchins and everything. There's a lot that happened on that day, and not a lot that was good. And you often talk about errors being a Swiss cheese model. And Swiss cheese, if you line up all the holes just right, something gets through. Well, in this case, a lot of holes got lined up out on the set of Rust, and tragically, something went through, and that was a 45 caliber bullet that struck Helena Hutchins and then Joel Souza. Fortunately, from everything I've been able to find, Mr. Souza has recovered and seems to be doing well from all indications. As far as Miss Hutchins, well, my thoughts with her family, because again, you shouldn't go to work and get dead. At the simplest level, that should not be a consideration. This should not have been something that happened, you know, on a movie set. They're out there filming a movie, and how in the did this happen? Well, it did happen, unfortunately. And, in a lot of ways, that's bothersome to me just because I've handled firearms for quite some time. I've worked on movie sets before. I've worked on a couple of shows, and I've worked both working security for shows, perimeter security, and I've worked as a set medic on a show. And I can say this: it's not a problem with all of Hollywood. It's not a problem with all productions by any stretch of the imagination. I know that the show I was on, we, followed the guidelines very, very, very well and very explicitly, and we made darn sure no one was going to get hurt doing something stupid, or if they did get hurt, it was a freak accident, not something that there were, 13, 14 mistakes made in the entire adventure, plenty to go around. So, alrighty, we're going to dig in now a little bit more to the Alec Baldwin case. Again, sort of watching the chat out of the corner of my eye. If you're in the chat, give us a thumbs up, give us a like, tell us where you're from, what's going on. What do you think is going to happen with Alec Baldwin? Hit that down in the comments below. Do you think, hey, it's accidents happen, no biggie, it's a movie, or do you think he should face some sort of criminal prosecution? Do you think, and then we'll talk about the civil cases that are going on, where do you stand on the civil cases? What do you think should happen, with the husband and the child of Helena Hutchins? What should Alec Baldwin do for them on the civil side? We'll talk about what's going on with that and, how that stacks up. Not really a big fan of the way that's working out, but hey, it is what it is. We'll talk about it. Alrighty. This all begins once upon a time around October 21st of 2021. Yes, we're coming up on the 2-year anniversary of this. In a month or so, month and a half, there's a fatal shooting that occurs on the set of Rust. That's the name of the movie. Helena Hutchins is tragically killed and Joel Souza is wounded. Now, immediately after that, they do an interview with Alec Baldwin, several of the cast members back at the police station. As the video we've seen come out, Alec Baldwin talks about what happened and everything that went on, and we basically get his side of the story. And, well, that video from the interrogation room where they finally let him know that Miss Hutchins has passed away at the University of New Mexico Medical Center. He, couldn't believe it. And, way it can't happen. He's really incredulous. And I believe in my heart of hearts that he was incredulous. He didn't plan for this to happen. Nobody plans to have an accident like this. And, regardless of what we may believe about Mr. Baldwin, he's going to be carrying the guilt of this event with him for the rest of his life. He knows in his heart of hearts, whether he'll admit it or not, whether he'll admit to the police or admit to the court or admit to her husband or anyone else, he knows way down deep that he killed somebody. And he's responsible for that child not having a mother, that husband not having a wife. And it wasn't a situation that was even, remotely justified. It wasn't like he did it in self-defense or, no, he did it in oopsie, for lack of a better term. Whether he'll admit that or not, sometimes people don't really want to admit something publicly, but they know deep down. Now, December 2nd, 2021, and this was where this really got bizarre. Because everybody knows, one of the things, if you're potentially in a whole heck of a lot of trouble, you talk to your lawyer, you talk to your lawyer, you talk to your lawyer, you don't talk to the police, and for the love of God, don't give an interview on ABC to George Stephanopoulos. You don't sit there and do an hour-long TV interview trying to go out and play PR media men. Now, hey, wait, he's Alec Baldwin. He's special, right? We're all going to just believe what he said, and it makes all the sense. And Alec Baldwin said he did not pull the trigger. The gun just went off. The gun was defective. It's all the gun's problem. I've heard that before. I've heard that a lot of times. It just went off. I don't know what happened. Well, Alec, let's talk. I think we can show you what happened. And Alec, if you ever catch this one, nothing personal, man. I actually, in a way, feel bad for you because I know you got to go to bed at night thinking about that woman you killed. It is what it is. But how about the fact of the guns don't just go off? I may or may not have one sitting around right here, and it's not going off. And I have no fear in my heart of it just going off. Now, if an idiot starts manipulating it, well, you get a possibility there. But so he does this PR appearance, and this blew my mind. Like I said, if I was, when I'm not an attorney, but if I was his attorney, I'd be like, no, don't go out on national TV and talk your story because, your antics in the interrogation room that made it video that got out, they were bad enough. We don't need a whole hour-long special with George Stephanopoulos. But hey, Alec, you did it, so now you're going to wear this one. Now, it comes out April 20th of 2022. So the first thing we hear is that New Mexico OSHA has come out and issued $139,000 in change in fines. They basically call the production a failed effort across the board. They cite the fact that there were 2 previous firearm mishaps in the week prior to the mishap that resulted in Miss Hutchins' death. Folks, if you've had 2 previous mishaps with firearms in the last week that resulted in bullets getting shot, are you not going to be extra careful? I mean, knock on wood, for what it's worth, I've never had like that big negligent discharge, but if I had, it would make me 10 times more careful right after it. Think about if you had a near car wreck. Oh my God, did that just happen? You're going to be a little bit more careful driver. No. Cites that several crew members were concerned about the issue, but no corrective actions were taken. Armorer Hannah Reed, it cited, was not provided with adequate time to perform her duties. And that Armorer Reed, that's Hannah Gutierrez Reed. We'll be talking about her a little bit later on in here. And again, I've got my opinions. We'll talk about my thoughts with her. I don't feel that this is largely her fault, although I think it's a little bit of an oops on her part. However, unfortunately, she was the armorer, and it is what it is. That was, kind of rough. Now, it's interesting that even OSHA said she was not provided with time to do her duties properly. And she also had previously complained that she was doing the armorer job plus other jobs as well. Well, I got news for you. If you're doing too many jobs at once, mistakes are going to happen. Maybe a mistake when you load a gun, put a real round in it, not a dummy. Could be. Let's keep going. Now, in August 2nd of 2022, the first FBI report comes out on the firearm. Now, the firearm that this happened with was sent to the FBI for testing. And what the FBI does is basically they test the firearm and see if it works when it functions normally. They run it through its paces and say, okay, when used as intended, does this firearm work as intended? Yes, it seems to be working fine. Okay. The second phase of that, they go through, if something went wrong with this firearm, could we make it go off without pulling the trigger? Basically, they've heard the story before. If I didn't pull the trigger, the gun just went off. We've all heard that one time or two. Okay, so they tried to reproduce what Alec is alleging. So, first, they test it. Okay, when used as desired, it works properly. Okay. Secondly, is there any way that we can reproduce what Alec Baldwin is alleging? That it just went off without him doing anything, and guns just do that, right? They just go off. Well, they have tested it. They load it up again, and they then try to make it go off without pulling the trigger. And this frequently involves actually striking it with a hammer at different points on the base of it, on the back strap, on the hammer spur itself. And they use this hammer and they beat it. Why? Well, because can they make something happen to reproduce his series of events? If you say A, B, C happened, they're trying to prove that you can start at A and then B and C will result from there. And they went through every possible way they could to try to make this happen, to reproduce this. They were unable to reproduce it. As a matter of fact, they beat this firearm so badly that they actually broke pieces of it. Yes, they beat the firearm with a hammer until parts of the firearm broke. I'm going to say it again. Parts of the firearm broke while it was being beaten with a hammer, but it did not fire. The only way they were able to get it to fire was pulling the trigger, functioning exactly as intended in the beginning. So, the defective firearm from the FBI reports was sent back with this report in August of 2022. And when the firearm came back, it was actually had a couple of pieces broken off of it from where it was beaten into, well, submission, but not discharge. Now, at the same time this is going on with the criminal investigation of the case, we have a civil suit that's going on. On October 5th of 2022, Alec Baldwin settled a civil suit with Helena Hutchins' husband. Now, the settlement, the financial side is unknown at this time. However, they did name the husband as now an executive producer of the film Rust. Now, I don't know what the money side is, what the cash or how much a year or for the rest of their life or what Alec or the production company or anything. That's not been disclosed. They did say that, he's now been named as an executive producer of the film Rust. Now, the interesting part to me is this is October 5th of 2022. We're a year after his wife was killed. The mother of his child was shot. And we'll talk about that. She died a rather painful death. And he's now the executive producer of this film that has not shot a frame of film in a year. Remember, they're under investigation. From the moment that gunshot went off, production, shooting, anything set was totally shut down and closed. End of discussion, on hiatus, kind of like what they're on right now with everyone on strike. But nothing was getting shot. So here's this film that's half shot. It was a low budget film to begin with. And now it's sat, for a year. Now it's a Western, so it can sort of be, it's timeless enough. But I kind of feel bad for the guy if, being the executive producer of the film is a big deal to him. I mean, dude, if that's what you wanted and, maybe you don't need anything, you don't need the money, and you're following your wife's dream and you're making her project and there's an emotional attachment there. And I hope, I really do. Because to be the executive producer on this train wreck, and that's what it is, pretty much a train wreck, hey, I'm now the executive producer. Well, yeah, congratulations. That was, my dad used to say, that and $1.50 will get you on the crosstown bus. I don't know if this movie's going to come out. They have been, like I said, on hiatus for some time. They finally finished filming somewhere, I believe, in June of 2023. So when they get all this sorted out, I guess they'll figure it out. So there's that civil suit. Now, October 27th, again, basically over a year later, Santa Fe County Sheriff's Department investigators submit the results of their investigation to the DA to make a determination on if criminal charges will come in. And this is a DA thing. They're going to look over this file with all the evidence, witness, interviews, the copy of the FBI report, the copy of the autopsy, how this happened, a copy of everything to make a decision if they find there to be enough to be criminally charged. Okay. Now, a little bit after this, we have Alec Baldwin filing a civil suit against multiple crew members, including Hannah Gutierrez Reed. That was the young lady who was the armorer on set. David Halls, who was the first AD, the assistant director, and Sarah Zachary, who worked for the props company, who was working with Miss Reed regarding the firearms. Now, interesting to note, Hannah was the armorer. Okay. Now, from the one show I work set medic on, she is the queen god, queen bee, and all regarding anything to do with pew-pews on the set. Okay. The props girl, Sarah Zachary, is helping her out because Hannah is assigned so many other duties. Dave Halls is the assistant director who got a firearm from Hannah, handed it to Alex, and told him it was a cold gun, at least if you believe his statements to Mr. Stephanopoulos back in December of 21. So, theoretically, at one point that morning, Hannah loaded the gun, then it was in the safe, then Sarah had her mitts on it, and then somehow Dave Halls gets his mitts on it, he gives it to Alex, and somewhere along the lines, a real bullet got in there. I don't know. So this is how this is all playing out, and it gets kind of crazy. He's filing civil suit against them for what they've done to him. For what they have done to him. Now, I'm sure as the executive producer, as one of the producers on this, he's had quite a rough time. I'm sure he's had quite a sustainable financial loss, and I'm sure, I'd like to think at least, that he has enough of a conscience that he's lost a few nights of sleep after killing his cinematographer. But, Alec, bro, don't play the victim. This was disgusting. Alec, if your December 2021 Woe Is Me on ABC with Stephanopoulos was bad, you suing a bunch of your employees because they all messed up and made you kill someone after you had the gun in your hand, bro, take some responsibility for the love of God. Would you please? Don't be such a self-centered putz. Yeah, I said it. Alec, this one, real bad one. And this, again, you watch it, and this, again, someone who's handled firearms, who deals with firearms, who teaches this stuff. Really? So it's everyone else's fault besides you, Alex, huh? There's words for that. We'll keep going. Hey, if you want to, hit me in the chat. Tell me what word or, you would apply to somebody who blames everyone else because they shot someone. Give you a hint, it might rhyme with narcissist. But now, January 31st of 2023, well, it's announced that Alec Baldwin and Hannah Gutierrez Reed will be charged with involuntary manslaughter. In addition to that, there is in New Mexico a firearms enhancement, which means if the involuntary manslaughter occurs with a firearm, they put an automatic 5 years on top of that base sentence. Now, I saw this come out, and again, we are now in over a year of this, and we're hearing a lot of the Alec Baldwin fans, oh, it's no biggie, it's an accident, this. And I'm like, a woman lost her life because of someone being slack. A kid lost his mom. This guy lost his, this is no. So when a charge came out, I'm like, okay, involuntary manslaughter seemed to fit. Now, interesting, and this is where Alec Baldwin got very lucky, and Miss Reed, honestly, the firearms enhancement was not put into New Mexico law until May of 2022. Therefore, as a matter of law, in the legal sense, we can't charge him with something that wasn't on the law books when he did the act. It's called an ex post facto law. You can't do it. So they took the firearms enhancement off February 20th of 23. So it could have been up to 5 years prison time. And now it's down to 18 months for involuntary manslaughter. So they dropped the firearms enhancement possibility. The two of them could have faced 5 years prison apiece. And I mean, I feel worse for her than I do for him, but we'll get into that down the line. So this keeps going on. Then a lot of people saying, well, it's not really fair. And well, it's not really how can you call it manslaughter? So here's the New Mexico statutes. Now, they can either say manslaughter committed in the commission of an unlawful act not amounting to a felony. So we say an unlawful act not amounting to a felony. A simple purse snatching. But as I take the purse, the person I'm taking it from falls and hits her head. She's elderly. She dies. Well, simple purse snatching isn't really a felony, but it's an unlawful act. Someone died. I can go for involuntary manslaughter. I didn't mean to kill her. I didn't try to kill her, didn't plan to kill her. It just sort of happened while I was in the commission of that unlawful act. Well, that doesn't really fit Alec. The second part of it is in the commission of a lawful act, which might produce death in an unlawful manner or without due care and circumspection. Now, when we look at this one, was he committing a lawful act? Yes. Can that produce death in an unlawful manner when performed without due care and circumspection? Well, what would due care and circumspection mean? Let's go down this road a little bit more, because that's what they're pretty much charging him under. He committed a lawful act, but one which might produce death in an unlawful manner when done without due care and circumspection. So when we look a little further in the legal side of it here, we have, a killing by lawful act can be involuntary manslaughter, depends on whether the lawful act was done in an unlawful manner or without due care and circumspection. Now that phrase is a big one here. It has been held to involve the concept of criminal negligence, which includes any conduct that's reckless, wanton, or willful. Did he do something reckless? Did he do something willful? Think about this. You're driving down the road, a kid runs out in front of you, you can't stop in time, you hit the kid is killed, it's a tragedy, but you weren't doing anything negligent. I mean, it's an accident, but now, if you were going 40 through a subdivision that's marked 15 miles an hour, or you were driving through a school zone at 75 with, a blood alcohol of 0.20, well, yeah, then you may well have been criminally negligent because you're doing something that we all know to be reckless, wanton, or willful. And the minute this came out, we again heard the battle cry. Oh, you don't understand. It was just an accident. Well, when you look at what should due care and circumspection be, well, we know as firearms holders, we have our 4 rules of safety that we live and die by, quite literally. Treat every firearm as loaded and should be treated as such until you personally cleared it and confirmed it. Never aim a firearm at anything that you're not willing to kill or destroy. Don't place your finger on the trigger until you're pointed on the target and ready to shoot. And always be sure of what is behind, beyond, and next to your target. That's simple. Those are our 4 rules. If you're handling a live firearm, these are the rules. Always, every time, all the time. And a lot of people say, oh, but you don't understand this. The rules don't apply because he's an actor. It's Hollywood. Well, first off, does state law still apply to a movie scene? Yes, it does. Much the same way as if you get drunk and you run someone over in your car, yes, it still counts as DWI. Well, how about if you do it in your company truck? It doesn't matter that you were at work when you did it. The rules are the rules. Are there special rules for movies? Is there a movie company policy for this? Well, yeah, there actually is. And that's where things get really interesting. The Screen Actors Guild publishes a lot of material, and this is an excerpt from one of them. And I'm going to bring it up on the full screen here. Let's see, bring this one up full. Let's read this. As an actor, and this comes from the Screen Actors Guild documentation for 2009, and it's the most recent copy that's out there. Their rules for dealing with firearms on movie sets. Treat all weapons as though they are loaded and ready to use. Do not play with weapons, and never point one at anyone, including yourself. Follow the directions of the property manager, the property master, and weapons handler regarding all weapons. The use of firearms or weapons may have special permits, etc., etc. Now, anyone handling a weapon shall receive proper training and know all operating features and safety devices. And if firearms and other weapons are used in filming, they should meet with the cast or crew and inform them of the safety precautions in effect and answer any questions they may have. Well, treat all weapons as though they're loaded. He didn't do that. Never point one at anyone, including yourself. He didn't do that. He broke those two rules. So the fact that, yes, it's a movie scene, and we can, give Alec Baldwin, it doesn't count because it was a movie. It was a movie. You don't understand. He didn't mean to kill anyone. It was just a movie. I've heard that so many times over. And again, given the fact that a woman lost her life, it sort of drives me a little bit batty because, you know what? She lost her life because of why? Because, well, it's a movie and he kind of did something kind of stupid. And I think something very stupid, but that's my opinion. Okay, whatever, I'll live with it. Now, let's go a little bit further into the Screen Actors Guild because, it was an actor and it was a movie and it was a movie. This is their safety bulletin that's referred to on the other slide about, you can look at number 1, 2, and 3 safety bulletins. Blanks can kill you. Treat all firearms as though they are loaded. Live ammunition is never to be used nor brought onto any studio lot or stage. These guidelines are intended to give recommendations for the safe handling and use, storage of firearms. Let's see, the next highlight here. Before the use of any firearm in a rehearsal or on-camera sequence or off-camera use, all persons involved must be thoroughly briefed at an on-site safety meeting where the firearms will be used. Well, folks, guess what? They didn't do this. There were not safety briefings. So again, wow, problem there. Let's go a little further. No one shall be issued a firearm until he or she is trained in the safe handling and use, safety lock, and proper firing procedures. Any questions as to the competency of the person, property master, or the weapons handler or the appropriate person shall determine if additional training is needed. So he should know everything about that pistol, right? Or that firearm, that revolver. We can keep going down here. How about this one? General use. Refrain from pointing at anyone, including yourself. If it is absolutely necessary to do so on camera, consult the property master or, in his or her absence, the weapons handler and or other appropriate personnel determined for safety. Remember, any object at which you point a firearm could be destroyed. This sounds a lot like those 4 rules that we live with. How about this one? Never place your finger on the trigger until you're ready to shoot. Keep your finger alongside the firearm and off the trigger. Now, I know you've heard this before somewhere. I know we've heard that somewhere. Know where your intended target is. Basically, know what you're doing with the gun, where you're pointing it, what's beside it, behind it, beyond it. Never lay a firearm unattended. Unless actively filming or rehearsing, they should be safely secured. On the day of the incident, there were 3 firearms left unattended on a roller cart on the set. Hannah had gotten them out of the safe. She left them there and went off to do that other ancillary job she was assigned. And this again is where, yes, she has some fault in this, but I feel bad for her. This is one of her first major shows. She was there and she was being told to do things that were unsafe by people with a heck of a lot more Hollywood cred than her. Now, if she had turned around and said, "No, I'm not going to leave these 3 firearms sitting here unattended. I'm going to stand here with them and you get someone else to go do whatever other job you wanted me to do." But on a low budget production, she's wearing a lot of hats. So, fine. And I'm cool with her wearing a lot of hats. Where do we need to draw the line? Well, how about this one? She can wear 3 or 4 hats at a time while the guns are locked up in the safe. But once she puts that combination in that safe and she starts breaking out firearms, the only hat she's supposed to be wearing is that of the armor of being safe with firearms. So, again, I'll cut her a little bit of slack on this, but let's keep going. Only a qualified person, jamming. Okay, we'll scroll down a little bit here. Sorry if I'm giving you a little bit of a headache on the scroll. I've been through this a few times already. Their own qualifications for working with the type of firearm being used, the knowledge of safe handling, use, and safekeeping, and familiarity with blank ammunition. So they got to make sure people are familiar with using blanks. Maybe if we were familiar with all the types of blanks and ammos and everything else, that would have been a big deal. Now, I'm just going right through. This is their bulletin. This is from the Screen Actors Guild. This is not something I made up or anything else. Now, this is a big one. Ensuring that any actor who is required to stand near the line of fire, not in the line of fire, not have the barrel pointed at her or him or them, but near the line of fire, be allowed to witness the loading of the firearms. Those firearms were loaded at 10 o'clock that morning, 9 o'clock that morning when they came on set. Was anybody in that church when the charge went off allowed to witness anything? No. The personnel loading the firearms and the designation of an experienced person working under his or her immediate supervision should be loaded just before they're used in the scene. Number 11 right there. Folks, this is just, again, when you start cutting corners, which they did a lot, you suddenly realize that this is a recipe for disaster. It is a recipe for disaster. And perhaps that's why they had 2 previous negligent discharges within 7 days before the death of this woman. You know, as we come down here, I think there was one more I had highlighted. Yeah, on controlled units, they may use live ammunition. It should be very rare. Should be only used if the following criteria have been met. And there's a whole list of criteria here. And if you're having live ammunition, even on the set, is like a big deal. They should not be live rounds, real bullets on the set. But you know what? They did it. They really did it. And it talks about before the loading of any live ammo, they should have a safety meeting. Well, they didn't have any of those. So we can see how this went. You know, cast and crew members shall be limited to only those absolutely required to catch the effect. No minors present anywhere in the vicinity when you've got live ammunition being discharged. They shouldn't have even had live ammunition. Now, this is real interesting here. The weapons handler, other appropriate personnel, they should not use these things as props. Folks, they won't even keep it on the set for any longer than's absolutely necessary. and it shall be secured in a locked box. Yeah, leave it on the trailer, right? Leave it on the cart. Leave it on Hannah's cart while Hannah goes and does something else. Now, Hannah shouldn't have gone and done something else, but she was getting told to. She was getting pushed. And I guarantee a 21, 22-year-old on her first big show with, Alec Baldwin as the executive producer. Yeah. But they should be talking about, requiring transport for live ammo to and from the set on the day of its use. Wow. So these are their rules. I'm not making this up. When you're on a range or a military base, you should have an overall range master. All these shall be strictly followed. And guess what? They're not strictly following any of this. And so from that standpoint, to me, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be an ass, but folks, it's pretty damn ugly. And when I say it's pretty damn ugly because we got somebody killed, very simply, because no one followed the rules. Now, Alec was charged at the end of January. And we all looked at the law back then. I did a stream back then about Alec Baldwin's being charged. And I thought it was fair. I don't think it was premeditated murder. I don't think he woke up that day and decided, yeah, you know what? I think Helena's been kind of bossy recently. I think I'll put a bullet in her. No. I think he cut a lot of corners and he did a lot of things that would warrant that willful, reckless misconduct, and it resulted in someone's death. Now, do I think, as a matter of opinion, or a matter of law, I understand why they got rid of the firearms enhancement, but I kind of wish he had gotten that one. I wish it would have been in place at the time, but I understand it wasn't. And so from a legal standpoint, we can't charge you with something that wasn't in place at the time you did it. Fair. Okay. Now, April 20th of 23, charges are all dropped against Alec Baldwin. Now, they were dropped without prejudice, and that means a lot. When they're dropped without prejudice, that means they can be brought back. If the charges have been dropped with prejudice, it means the case is over and done with, and that basically, it is what it is. So from that standpoint, nothing more can happen. But when they're dropped without prejudice, it means they can bring them back. And on manslaughter, you've got a little while as far as the statute of limitations to bring them back. And they were dropped, questionable reasoning, a lot of thoughts why, but part of it was also the filming was resuming the next day. Now, interesting to note, the charges were still continued against Hannah Gutierrez Reed. Because remember, we have the great Alec Baldwin, who's gone out and done his PR thing and told everybody how everyone else's fault besides him, and he's suing everyone else. So the 21-year-old, who wasn't even in the room when it happened, we're going to put her in jail for involuntary manslaughter and drop the charges against Alec the Great. Politics, anybody? I wonder, the quality of lawyers they get. I don't know. But filming resumes the next day. Interesting to note, not on the same set. We're not even back to the same set. Now, we're waiting to see what happens with that. In May, the filming is done, and everyone's kind of wondering what's next. Well, the Hague report came in August 2nd of this year. Now, the Hague report is a real interesting one. The Hague report is a 30-page report on the firearm and ammunition. Now, the FBI crime lab had already said the gun worked perfectly when you tried to use it, but it would not function without the trigger being pulled. Well, guess what? Hague report said the same thing. And when we get into the Hague report, quote unquote, on page 26, from an examination of the fired cartridge case and the operationally restored evidence revolver. Now, why they have to restore the operational side of it? Well, because the FBI had broken it and beating it with a hammer. This fatal incident was the consequence of the hammer being manually retracted to its fully rearward cocked position, followed at some point by the pull or rearward depression of the trigger. What? Alec Baldwin swears he didn't pull the trigger. We've now got the FBI lab and the Hague report, which this is a private firearms engineering group, both saying, yeah, you did. You had to. Now, they did come up with the only conceivable alternative to the foregoing would be a situation in which the trigger was already pulled or held rearward while retracting the hammer to its full cocked position. Although unlikely and totally contrary to the normal operation of these single-action revolvers, such improper handling, i.e., having the trigger squeezed when you pull it back, would result in a live cartridge. So either you cocked it and pulled the trigger, or you pulled the trigger and you cocked it. But at one point or another, you pulled the damn trigger, Alec. I hate to break it to you. Goes on to say that although Alec Baldwin repeatedly denies pulling the trigger, given their tests, findings, and observations reported here, the trigger had to be pulled or depressed sufficiently to release the fully cocked or retracted hammer of the evidence revolver. Now, the Hague report gave us a lot of evidence. They also did a bunch of video evidence, and they searched and reviewed a bunch of video evidence that was acquired pursuant to the search warrant. They took everything that the sheriff's department did and kind of went back over it and tried to investigate any questions or anything. Now, they were commissioned by the prosecutor or the district attorney to say, okay, we've dropped the charges for now because he swears he didn't pull the trigger. Go back over and see what you can find out. And they went through everything again, and this is their report. Now, the interesting part, when we're going to get into their report here in a minute, because we've got some really interesting stuff from them, because we're going to start evaluating the firearms. Now, digging into the rest of this report kind of requires us to dig in a little bit deeper to the world of what we might call pew-pews. Now, I know that fondling, manipulating, or otherwise playing with firearms is not something that YouTube wants, and so that's why we're going to have to go ahead and take a break here from YouTube and finish all of the rest of this on Rumble Vision. Sorry, YouTube, just can't do it. Y'all told me not to, so I'm not going to. Love you lots, mean it, but gonna have to shut it down. Bye. All right, if you want to, you can go follow me over on Rumble for the rest of this. We'll be starting this out here in a second. Go ahead and disconnect off YouTube land. All righty. Let's see here. How to shut this down. Sorry, a little bit new at this. Understand that you get nothing but the highest quality here. Let's see. Let me see here. Folks, if I do get kicked off, I'll pop back up on Rumble here in a second. Otherwise, trying to edit out of YouTube. All right, hold on a second here.